We got a lot of news out there all around the world. We got things going crazy out there. Food riots, protests, governments being shaken to their core. Of course, you've heard already about Sri Lanka, what's going on there. Continued protests. Their government has already fallen. They've been replaced with a new government. But they've stopped all fuel purchases by civilians over there. The only people that are getting fuel anymore are military and police and such. There's just no fuel in the country. Everything has ground to a halt. How are they supposed to farm if they don't have fuel for their tractors and for their equipment in the fields? All this is being instigated once again because they decided to get rid of synthetic fertilizers, and they didn't have any sort of process to get off this. They just decided somewhere in some office just to stop using chemical based fertilizers, and their yields plummeted, and they started having to buy food from overseas, and they just didn't have any exports in order to generate the cash that they need to import food. So they ended up importing food and not fuel. All right, what you probably haven't heard so much about is the violent protests in Ecuador. The government has literally lost a city, a small city, Pollo, in the Amazon. It's sounding more and more like a revolution there. There's the government is being blockaded even in the capital. The police and military can't get out because of the barricades that have been erected by citizens. The indigenous population there are just rising up against the government. They have taken back at least one city there, Pollo, but partial cities have been taken over and sections of cities have been taken over, and this is all by unarmed citizenry. Now, that's not to say they aren't unarmed. They're arming themselves wherever they can find, but they are just building barricades, and they are stopping the government from instituting rule of law. They can't control their own country. If you've heard before about the riots in Peru, that is obviously not the same as Ecuador here. Ecuador is a new problem that has arisen. In Peru, farmers and truckers are still striking. They are striking, and they are grinding the country to a halt. There were food riots in Peru earlier, but as I said, now there are also food riots and protests in Ecuador. All right, Dutch farmers are taking their things to another level. They had previously blockaded several what's called land borders to other countries, parking their farm equipment to block highways. They are saying that the government and other people in the world are not yet listening to them, and so they're looking to take things to the next level. They are, once again, protesting against environmental regulations supposedly about to come into effect to cut nitrogen emissions by farming down 30 to 60%, depending on which areas. But they're talking about, basically having to eradicate 40% of the livestock in the Netherlands. And that is not going down quietly. The Dutch farmers are rising up, and to take things to the next level, they are organizing to start taking over ports and airports. They are planning on moving in on the airports and parking farm equipment, tractors and such. Not sure if they're going to try to get out on the runways or whatever. And so the government is now considering calling out their equivalent of their National Guard. The government is starting to panic, and this is the farmers who are just saying, no, absolutely not. You do not get to tell us to shut down our farming operations in the middle of a food shortage. There's empty shelves out there on the store shelves, and there's just not food out there. We're trying to produce food, and you're telling us we need to cut back and stop farming, which is just incredible. Food riots in Ghana, in Africa. There was also an anti-government riot in Khartoum, in Sudan. Argentina, trucker protests have started up a few days ago and are ongoing to bring Argentina to a halt. They are trying to block exports of food, particularly, and farmers have just stated that they plan on starting protests in 2 weeks. They are looking to follow the example of their Dutch farmers, and they are looking to grind things to a halt. A lot of protests, a lot of issues that they're having with the government meddling in their work, as well as the inflation and the costs of everything spiraling out of control. In addition to that, of course, a lot of this is stemming back to fuel prices. Just to put things in perspective, OPEC, the cartel that is controlling the price of oil, they set how much their members are supposed to produce oil-wise. Since 2020, they have produced 1/2 billion, 500 million barrels of oil less than their targets. So they've been saying, we're going to produce this much oil. We're not going to produce more than this much oil. We're going to produce this much oil. But in fact, they're actually producing this much oil. And not only that, but they are missing their targets more and more each month. They are now close to being under their targets by 3 million barrels per day of oil. That's how bad things are getting out there, is that OPEC is trying to pump as much oil out of the ground as they can, and their production is actually dropping. They are falling behind, further and further behind their targets. But you know who is pumping oil? Who is pumping record amounts of oil and selling it? Bear Country is selling record amounts of oil at record high prices. You know, there's just these moments where you just realize that everything that we're doing is hurting us, but not hurting the guys we're supposed to be hurting. You ever notice that? I mean, just like food prices are through the roof, and who produces the most exports of food? Oh, that's the Bear Country again. Yeah. Why is it that everything we're doing hurts us so much and doesn't seem to hurt them? That's just, I'm putting that out there. Someone put it wisely. They said this showdown that's happening in Europe is the stupid versus the evil. Okay? And we should pat ourselves on the back for not being the evil, but we are the stupid. It's the things that we're doing are not accomplishing the things that they're supposed to be accomplishing in Europe. Belarus has just called up its reserves. Why are they mobilizing their military? That's a good question, isn't it? Why is Belarus mobilizing their military? And why is the rest of Europe mobilizing their militaries? Friends, we are on the brink of something very, very big. And I've tried to bring you the news of what's going on with that. I'm not allowed to say a whole lot, or else the powers that be come down and shut me down. And they have been doing that. They've been coming after me a bit the last few weeks, and I've been going back and forth with them. And you know, basically they've demonetized about 25% of my traffic over the last month, which is really frustrating. I'm going to keep believing that it's benign, but, you know, we all can see between the lines there. But big things are coming. And I'm dedicated to kind of get that word out to you. There's a lot of channels out there talking to you guys about what's going on out there in the world. And I try to just bring you as much of the information as possible and to get it out to as many new people particularly. That's what I've really tried to do, is not to push any of you guys away. I want you all to feel welcome here in a place to ask questions, to engage with the information that's out there. As I bring the reports and point you to information out there, I want you to feel like that you're not, you know, just because you're not as prepared as this person over there, just because you are still deciding whether you need to prepare and to what level, that you are welcome here to just get the information that you need so that you can make the decisions out there. Now, obviously, you know my position on things. I think you should stack it to the rafters. But you're adults, and you get to choose what you do with the information I provide to you. But things are looking very dark in Eastern Europe right now, like things are about to break out in a major way. Take that for what you will. But not only that, as I've just showed you in a little bit of a glimpse around the world, is that we are looking at food riots. We are looking at governments faltering at every turn. A lot of these third world governments are not prepared to withstand these type of uprisings and protests and such like that. We're seeing a number of these protests where the government has opened fire with live rounds on the public. They don't have all the fancy, you know, tools and gases and helmets and everything like that. In some of these places, it is just life and death, and we're seeing that people are getting desperate out there. Those prices going up at your store are hurting you in the pocketbook. Some of you, it's hurting a lot. You're making some tough choices right now. But people in the third world, they're being devastated by this. Some of the people watching this video are being devastated by this. But when you have a whole nation of people who are being devastated, they stop having something to lose. They have nothing to lose, and they start looking for answers or anything that could possibly be better out there. And when somebody comes along and says, if I were in charge, I could do things better, we start seeing people getting behind those people in a major way all around the world. Last time food prices were up this high, we had the Arab Spring. This summer is getting ready to explode all around the world. I don't know what country you're living in, but a lot of countries are just on the edge. Protests are just ready to just go. And it just takes a little spark. It takes a little, just some kind of reason for people to gather around, some kind of issue. And that's why we're just kind of watching. It's like a fire watch right out west in the United States, where you have all the dry ground, all the brush is just bone dry. And it's just like, if there's just a spark, it's just going to go up, the whole thing. That's what we're looking at. The world is drying out, and we're just waiting for these sparks to hit the dry grass. And what that's going to look like, we don't know, but it is going to get ugly. Folks, make some good choices out there. Do what you got to do to get a little more prepared, because regardless of what exactly goes down in the next weeks to months, you're going to wish in the future that you had stacked up more and gotten more prepared right now. Things are getting crazy, folks. Don't be afraid. Don't get paralyzed by the fear. Let the fear, let the concern of what's going on out there to spur you to action. Take steps. If you're like, no, I don't need to take any action, well then, I'm glad you're being entertained by this video. But if you are realizing there's bad stuff happening, let that fuel you into action, not just watching another video and getting more spun up. Get spun up enough to get out and start doing some things, right? And make sure you're de-stressing with things, whether that's manual labor. I'm de-stressing right now, moving all of my logs onto and stacking them into my wood pile. That's a bit of work for me, and we are all there. We need some de-stressing work, so let's do that. All right, folks, if you like this video, you might want to check out this video right here. Otherwise, I will see you later. Steve Poplar, out.